We are now going to one of my favorite headlines of this conference. Fix the fucking data. That's the name of the next talk. And when they're swearing in the title talk, you know you're in for a ride. It illustrates just how strongly Scott feels about data, especially shitty data. Because no matter how well intentioned, beautifully designed, and perfectly planned your vision is, without proper data, you risk missing the target altogether. Author, software engineer, agile data coach, and advisory board member at the Intersection Group, Scott is here and joining us from Toronto to share what makes him so goddamn worked up about data. Please give him a warm applause.
So right about now, some of you are probably thinking you're seeing some sort of a theme with my talk. Well, no, Dr. Doom has almost nothing to do with this talk. So you might not be right about this. But some of the language, let me explain this. So psychology tells us that honest people tend to swear a bit more than, well, not so honest people. But I'm a consultant, so maybe not. I'm also from Canada, and Canadians also, except our previous speaker, although he did say the word fricking, so he was like this close. Also a Canadian. Canadians tend to swear a bit more than others, but frankly, you would too if you had the same neighbors that we do. Okay. So anyways, we'll leave it there. Okay, so I'm Scott Ambler. I'm one of those evil agile guys. My apologies for what some of my colleagues have done to this industry. But hey, you know what? Certification scams, what a surprise, huh? So it all sort of blew up. But I lean towards the Agile for Adults, very small group within the Agile community. I'm the guy behind the Agile modeling and the Agile data methods. This is an Agile data talk for the most part. As well as I was one of the co-creators of PMI's Discipline Agile Toolkit. So if you're actually interested in what real world business or enterprise agility looks like, you might want to take a look at that, be that as it may. Not here to talk about that today, though. What I am here to talk about is data. And I'm going to argue, as the title says, you should fix your fucking data. You really should. Okay? For a lot of good reasons. I'm going to talk about it from an enterprise design point of view, but I would also talk about this as well. I do talk about this topic as well a lot from a technical point of view as well as a business point of view. I'll have a few things to say about some of my former colleagues in the project management space, because they have a lot to be blamed for, I think, in this space for some of our problems, at least. And I'll get into some industry stats, but I sort of like to start with the end in mind. So I have three main messages today. So data quality is a critical success factor for data-driven decision-making as well as for AI. I recently earned a master's degree in AI. I also have a master's degree from the 90s in what used to be called human-computer interaction, which was what UX and CX was called 4 or 5 renamings ago. I think we're due for another renaming at some point, but well, let's see how that plays out. Data quality impacts the delivery of our operational services. And I think this is one of the key things for this group here. If you don't have the data that you need, or if the data is no good, I don't give a rat's ass about how well you've designed things. Who cares? You can't run it. So in the keynote this morning, we heard about, and I fully agreed with it, that we need to start with design thinking in order to make sure we build the right systems and right AIs and right services, all that good sort of stuff. Yes, but we also need to look at it from the ground and look up. And we also need to have the right systems and the ability to put the right systems and the right data in place. Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart on you. So I'll talk about that a bit. And the best place, this is what gets radical for my good friends in the data community. The best place to fix data quality problems is at the source. This should not be a radical opinion. It is. I get beat up all the time for that from my good friends in the data community, because most of them don't want to do their jobs. And I would argue most of them don't even know what their job should be, which is why they're so fun to work with sometimes. And I would consider myself in that community, although not the biggest fan of it. So I'm going to throw around a few technical terms. One of them is data debt. Data debt is the data aspects of technical debt within your organization. So technical debt is a techie term for bad quality, because we wouldn't want to use language that other people could understand because we're techies, right? Always got to come up with a new term every few years, particularly, both in the technical community and, of course, my good friends, the consultants. So why does data debt occur? The biggest problem is actually a business problem exacerbated by project managers, and I call it the on-time, on-budget project. As soon as I hear that, congratulations, I know you're screwed, because you will deliver poor quality, because quality always gets cut when you have to hit a date, when you have to make sure you're under budget. And it's interesting, I don't care about budgets. I don't care about schedules for the most part. I care about weird things like spending the money wisely and delivering when it makes sense to deliver, rather than some mystical date that was more than likely pulled out of the ass of an executive. Because this is how they think. I used to be an executive, and I learned this the hard. I always suspected it. And then you work your way up to that point and you realize, oh crap, they don't know what they're doing. They're just like the rest of us, right? They're doing the best they can, but they're making up a lot of crap, often thinking that they're motivating the worker bees by setting budgets and setting dates and all that sort of stuff, including regulatory dates too. So, if you want to talk about meeting regulations, I'm a firm believer in that, but those dates are often made up too by people who also should know better. So anyways, there's a lot of good reasons and a lot of bad reasons for why we have data quality problems. So why should you care? Well, like I said, I don't really care how well designed your service is if you don't have the data and the underlying infrastructure to implement it. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Pretty little journey maps, though. Good job. What does it say about your organization and about your to your customers if you don't have the data about the types of things you're doing, and if it's poor quality? Like what, if you went to your bank, and I'm sure none of this has never happened to any of you, but if you went to your bank and they didn't know what accounts you had, or if they thought you had 3 different spellings of your name, or that you still lived at an address that you haven't been at for 15 years, that happened to me a couple weeks ago, you'd be concerned about the qualities of the services they were selling to you and that you were relying on. They can't do basic things like know where you live, or at least agree on the wrong address. Like, wouldn't it be nice if they were wrong across the board, or right? Well, that's not that good, but I'd rather they be right across the board. But when they can't even agree, and they know, right? They should have a clue that something's wrong there. And they often don't. So how long are you going to survive when you're providing bad services based on bad data? Are your systems really assets? Is your data an asset? It sickens me when I hear data people talking about data as an asset, and the very next thing out of my mouth is, really, do you have a regression test suite for your database? No? Then you're not treating it like an asset, so fuck off. Fetch me a coffee. Make yourself less useless. I'm Canadian, what can I say? I was in Ghent yesterday, beautiful city, and on a boat cruise, they're showing off all the old buildings. And we go under this bridge, and the guy starts talking about, and during World War II, some of our allies shot up this bridge, and you can still see all the bullet holes. And I go, oh man, This is another drunk Canadian story. Sure enough, a bunch of drunk Canadian soldiers shot the bridge up. But anyway, so that's so don't mess with me when I'm drunk. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so how can you guide when, how can leadership guide? How can they make data-driven decisions, which I'm sure they've been talking about for years, when they don't have accurate data? Come on, right? So data quality should be reasonably important for enterprise design. So what's some industry stats? Not from MIT, so maybe they're accurate. Anyways, this is actually a made-up number. I know this gentleman is a really, really bright guy. He wrote his PhD on data quality. But this is a very well thought out guess at the time. And you can read a very detailed paper on that if you want. So yeah, so you're losing roughly 20% of revenue due to poor quality data. In 2019, Accenture, so one of the big four, said only 1/3 of their executives trust their data. Sort of tells you they're not really on the ball. But anyways, only 1/3. 2/3 are smart enough not to. According to Gartner, a few years ago now, one of the very interesting and observable things about the data community, by the way, there's very little data about how effective they are. I always love to bash them on this one, particularly at data conferences. Just the entire audience goes, ooh, he's right. Roughly 30, now this is an average. So, for an average medium-sized company, you're losing about $13 million a year due to poor quality data. So, maybe it's 14 million now. And roughly 46% of organizations, at least last year, on their AI teams are suffering from data quality problems, it being a critical issue for them. And lack of skill and lack of design. There's a bunch of other issues too. But this was the, and there's several studies that say data quality comes in at either number 1 or number 2 for challenges with AI teams. My master's and my thesis was on the effect of data quality and the quality of AI models. One of the interesting things I found is some models really get nailed by poor quality data almost instantaneously. Some models don't really get affected at all, which was also very interesting. And particularly LLMs. I think one of the comments this morning from the during the keynote was about how a lot of hallucinations were happening. I don't mean to burst anybody's bubble, but LLMs, Gen AI, hallucinates exactly 100% of the time. That is the fundamental model. The issue is how good is the quality of the hallucination. So right there, this picture was generated by Gen AI. That is a prediction of what I wanted from my prompt. It hallucinated this, and after several rounds, I finally was happy with what it produced. Is it perfect? It's good enough. Who cares, right? But anyway, so that's a prediction of what I wanted. Yeah, AIs don't make decisions. They make predictions. And whether or not you decide to use that prediction in order to simulate a decision is up to you. I would highly suggest having humans in the loop. But anyways, that's just me. I'm a radical swearing type of a guy. I would swear by that. Okay, wow, that's interesting. That all came up. Okay, so Rob Seiner, a data governance genius. He's written 3 books called, and the titles are basically non-invasive data governance. So if your organization is struggling with data governance, I highly suggest looking at Rob Seiner's work. Bob, not Rob. Rob Seiner is the meathead. Bob Seiner, Robert Seiner. Anyways, and I'm happy to provide exact references later on after the talk. So he came up with this metaphor that data is the new water. A lot of people like to say it's the new oil. You can't drink oil, right? Well, you could, but good luck with that. So anyways, the idea here is I go to the tap because I want a glass of water. So I pour myself a glass of water and I get this filth. I'm not that thirsty. I'm not going to drink it. So how do this is at my house, so how do I fix this problem? Well, the easy way to do it is I get one of those Brita water jugs, and I put my water, I strain my water through the Brita jug, and it's all good. But the problem is this mess is also coming out of all my taps, including my shower. I don't want to drink it. I don't want to bathe in it. So my next best bet is I fix the water coming into the house. So I put a water filter on the incoming service. It cleans the water. Now it's all for the house. But unfortunately, everybody in my town has dirty water because the problem is our water source. Somebody is putting sludge into the water. So even though these two scenarios are fairly cheap, a $30 jug, a $2,000 house water filter system, they're very expensive solutions when you take into account the cost for the entire town, right? Because everybody's got to do this. So a better solution would be maybe we should filter the water for the town, right? And filter it one place. So it's a little more expensive for the town, but it's cheaper for everybody who lives here. But the problem is we're not the only town on the river. So everybody downstream has polluted water. That's bad. Next solution, well, why don't we go and find out where this filth is coming into the water? Oh, look, we go upstream and there's a pipe coming out of a factory and they're spewing sewage into the water. So you could put a filter on the pipe. That would be even better because now all the towns have clean water again. Better and cheaper. A little harder, but better. Or you could fix the real problem and you go and you clean it. You go into the factory and you, of course, work with the factory owner and you fix the one machine or two or three machines that are spewing garbage, then, going into the water system and so on. So fix the actual problem. Fix the machine. Clean it at the source. Fix it and clean it at the source. Okay, interesting way. So converting this into techie talk. So my apologies, I'm going to get a little technical here. Trust me, all of this stuff works. I'm happy to explain it later, if I use some weird techie term that you don't understand. So the equivalent is, why don't we just, in our code, when I'm displaying data on the screen or I'm pulling data off the screen, I'll write a little function to clean the data. Maybe it's not formatted right or something, right? Problem with that is I've got to do it. So if I've got customer first name, and I got to put it in, a capital letter first and a bunch of little letters. If I got to do that, I got to write this function, or at least invoke this function, each and every time I display or read this data, right? That's a bunch of changes in my code. Easy to do, cheap to do when you only look at it from the point of view of one thing, but it's pretty hard. It's pretty expensive, all right? Or I could fix the data coming into the system. So put it through a data abstraction layer going into my app. Or, better yet, I can make a copy of the bad quality data, cleanse it once, and then use it from there. This is what most of the AI people do, by the way. Right? They call this data wrangling or data prep, usually both. Or, and this is the big fad now, and it works in some cases, I could put a wrapper around the source system that's producing this bad data. Put a data contract in place or an API or something. Or I could fix the freaking application and fix the data sources to begin with, do it once and once only, and that way everybody's got clean data. Because the problem is any given piece of data could be used in multiple systems in multiple different ways, in multiple places, and so on. I want to fix it at the source. That's the cheapest and most effective way of doing it. But that implies that whoever owns the source, they need to be responsible. They need to be accountable. And that's where it falls apart in most organizations. So, is this as easy as it sounds? A little bit of work. So you got to fix the data source, you got to fix the database itself, clean up that problem, and you got to fix any systems that are accessing it that are causing the problem to begin with. So it's a little bit of work. but it's pretty straightforward. It's all very easy, very straightforward, no-brainer type stuff, but you got to get off your butt and do the work. There's no easy answer there other than do the work. And yeah, there's a few tools you could use that are pretty good, but still. So that's the techie side of things. What about the business side of things? How do we overcome the bullshit excuses for why we can't do it? And they're all bullshit. Because nobody ever calls almost always the executives. Oh, we don't have time to do this, or we have no budget. Really? You're probably spending a lot more time and a lot more money fixing it in multiple places. You're just not tracking it. So whip out a spreadsheet, figure it out, do about half hour worth of work, and it'll be blindingly obvious to do it right. We don't have the skills. Well, fair enough. Get them. This is not hard. Okay, you might not have the skills. Fine. No big deal. Send people on training or something. We have more important things to do. Really? I almost use one of those Thor memes. Really? Are you sure? My team doesn't own the data. Okay, somebody does. Always. Somebody does. They might not be in your organization, but somebody always owns that data source. If they're in your organization, I don't want to hear about it. That is a management decision now. If they're outside of the organization, so say you're getting incoming feed from Facebook or something, okay, fine, it's not perfect, and you might not be able to fix that. Or you might be able to work with that company to get them to fix that. Okay, so you can overcome these excuses if you want to. You can overcome the technology issues if you want to. Because what we want to do, we want to go from this. Dr. June was involved. How about that? Okay, so to wrap up, data quality is an issue. You want to fix this stuff. You really want your data to be a true asset, not just rhetoric coming from your data folks. Data quality impacts the delivery of everything that you do, like it or not. And the best place to fix these problems is at the source. And like I said, that should not be radical. Thank you very much. I guess I've got time for questions. Do I? Okay.